Hello and welcome to Film Companion South. Today we're going to be doing an Ask PR episode on Hero and Thambi. JV Productions India asks, does Tamil cinema really need a superhero and what is your opinion on it? It's a little difficult to answer this question because we are used to a cinema culture in which our big heroes do superhuman things without needing to invent themselves as a superhero. So I think the first thing that people who are making these superheroes need to see is, why do we need a superhero? If in another movie Sivakarthikeyan is beating up 20 people on his own, and here he's needing gadgets to do the same thing, there isn't much of a difference between that and this. In Hollywood, you don't have this because you don't have the average guy beating up 20 people. That's kind of a different thing. So the superhero stands apart from the regular hero. Here, it's a little bit of a thing. So I think somebody has to really. I didn't mind Hero at all, the movie, but I think somebody has to really find a reason for a superhero to exist in Tamil cinema, and I think that's how this thing can really work in our culture. Bharesh 23 says, I'm a Marvel DC fan, so is this an Indian version of Daredevil Batman like Mogamodi? No, I don't think it's like Batman. It's more like, see, because Batman is more like, I'm going to fight crime everywhere. There's a larger scope to it. Here, it's a very focused take on that. So I don't know if future installments are going to take up separate, one does the education industry and one takes up, I don't know, the medical industry or something like that. But I don't think that's this is the Indian version of Batman in that way. And also, if you look at it, one more thing is that Shankar has already done something like this in different films. He targets different, like he's already targeted the education industry, like those kinds of things. So I don't know. Again, I think we have to have a proper reason for the existence of a superhero before we actually say, whether he's a Daredevil or a Batman or whatever it is. Suresh Kumar Subramani says, which is better, Hero 2019 or Gentleman 1993? Definitely Gentleman 1993, because for its time, it's a very, very revolutionary movie, because usually the hero is the cop and the villain is the person who steals or does other things. Here, that's swapped. And for that time, it was really new, because here the villain is actually doing a hero's job, and the guy who's the cop, he's actually on the chase of Arjun, who's the hero. So he becomes the villain in this construct. So I think that's really something very interesting for its time. There's nothing as revolutionary in Hero. Can see same ideologies like district level toppers in both the movies, education minister, etc. Yeah, though Hero of course is better made, because today films are better made generally. There's a lot more intention. I mean, look at things like how the film looks. Hero looks much better, but in terms of content, definitely, Gentleman is the more revolutionary and interesting film. Vishwanathan Kalyanram asks, why Mithran doesn't want to give happily ever after kind of ending and instead chooses an open ending? Because I think when they wrote this, they wanted something to say that you can't just fix the whole thing. You can maybe stop this one guy, but it's not like fixing the whole system, because this is about fixing an entire system that encourages mediocrity and suppresses individuality. Now, Abhay Deol, the villain, is only one guy who does this. There are many, many people like him. So I think he stopped Abhay Deol, but I think the system is still at large. So I think that's why they wanted an open ending. Mage Sinu says, what could have been improved in Hero? How do you see it when compared to Kandasamy and Mogamudi? You know what, I would have really liked the children to be a much bigger part of this movie. I wish they had been the enablers of this hero right from the beginning, that they had a bigger part. Because, see, they're also invested in this because it's their future, and they're getting this man to be their representative. So I think I would have really liked that in Hero. It should have also made the movie a lot more fun, I think. Vimal MS9 says, Jeethu Joseph is a good director, but he disappointed us with his last few Malayalam movies. Has he lost his style of filmmaking? What's your opinion on Thambi and The Body? I haven't seen The Body, but Thambi was a bit disappointing for me. I'm curiously reminded of M. Night Shyamalan, because, his first big movie was The Sixth Sense. And it became such a blockbuster that's what he came to be identified with. And so, like, people started saying, oh, what's the M. Night Shyamalan twist or whatever it is. And I think that began to dictate how he wrote his stuff. I mean, I still think he does some very. I love Glass, for instance, this year's movie. I love Glass. But I think what happens is that pressure to do another Drishyam is so huge that they kind of get caught in a trap. And I think that's what happened in Thambi. But I think what has happened is they did Drishyam in a very natural and organic way. And I get the feeling that Thambi was kind of dumbed down a lot because they thought Tamil mainstream audience needs all these things, because every scene in the movie seems to be made for the audience in mind and not according to how the characters would actually interact with each other. They seem to be doing things so that they could fool us. When you look at Drishyam, the interaction between Mohanlal and all of the characters are very organic and natural, and you kind of get swept up in it. Here it's like they're all doing these artificial things so that you can be fooled, and I'm like, that's not the way to go about it. Dr. CGS says, between Velekaran and Hero, the angry young underdog who fights the system with way too much words and substance, the suave nemesis falls meekly, etc. Why do these actors accept these roles? Abhay Deol and Fahad Fasil both fine stars with unclear character arc. I mean, I think for them it's a change to do this kind of film. It brings about more visibility, and I think like a long time back somebody asked me, why did Anil Kapoor accept that role in a Mission Impossible movie? See, I think the money is good, it's great exposure, and in Hollywood people keep watching these films and casting agents are always on the lookout for interesting faces, so it might lead to better roles in the future. So you can't underestimate, based on the quality of the role, or sometimes visibility is also a big reason for somebody to take a role. So Abhay Deol may have this logic that I've done a lot of stuff in Hindi, let me just give this Tamil mainstream movie a shot and see what happens. So, it can also be visibility, that's what it is. But yeah, I think the template, because the Tamil film masala movie is itself like this, the need for a superhero is kind of questionable, and I think that's where the real problem arrives. Shankar R says, what did you feel about everyone's except Karthi's acting in Thambi? The acting didn't work for me at all, because I don't think it's the actor's fault so much as the director who wanted to kind of make them keep giving expressions that will throw us off balance. So when you look at Drishyam, Mohanlal's acting he's acting like that character. Here they're all acting like they want to fool the audience, and I think that was really annoying for me. Sandeep KCS says, do you feel P.S. Mithran takes the most of inspiration from Shankar, considering the direct connect between hero and gentleman? Yes, I mean, that's what the movie is. That's why they cast Arjun. Also considering that Irumbu Thirai was about the power of information similar to the scene in Boys with Senthil. I didn't think of that, but that's an interesting thing. I don't know, it's too soon to say whether he's inspired by Shankar, but at least I think one of the things I like about P.S. Mithran's films is that he writes very clean screenplays. There's no clutter. I think that might also be something that people may not like in Hero, because there are no spikes of adrenaline that are happening. But at the same time, it's a very clean, uncluttered kind of narrative. And I think that's something that Shankar doesn't always manage. Weetabix and Mix asks, is this Sivakarthikeyan's best acting performance in his career? I don't think so, because, see, I really like watching this actor on screen, and he's a very enjoyable, likable kind of character. But I don't know if this particular role has him doing something that he's never done earlier. So I know what your question is next, which is his best performance on screen. I'm not able to think of right offhand. But I liked him a lot in Velekaran actually. Ravi Teja says, the single thread in Drishyam was way more convincing and well written compared to Thambi's multiple subplots. Absolutely. Was Jeethu Joseph trying to overdo things which weren't apt for this genre, songs, fights, which literally added to nothing in the end? Absolutely, because see, that birthday song and all is embarrassing. When something like Drishyam happens, or even if you look at Papanasam, the Tamil remake, the most important thing in a thriller like that, an emotional thriller like that, is the mood. And when you're having a Goa song, when you're having a random fights, when you're having a happy birthday song, these really take away from the mood of the movie, because they kind of create artificial pockets in the screenplay where the mood is kind of flying off somewhere else. So to bring us back to the mood, like that birthday scene is intercut with a tense moment of this cop Ilavarasu coming and meeting Sathyaraj, and it should be really, that moment should actually make you feel Karthi's tension. But because of the song around it, you're left in one Rendingatan kind of emotional space, because you're not feeling the tension, but you're not doing this happiness thing either with everybody else. So it's really bizarre. And I'll tell you another instance of mood where this grandmother supposedly suspects Karthi's character. But then later, after he has this emotional speech with her, she helps him retrieve the letter by pretending to fall down from her wheelchair, and she kind of winks at him and all that. This is a very broad kind of performance, a very broad kind of moment, which again does not belong in this movie. So this movie is full of these tonal shifts that really killed it for me. Though I must say that the people around me in the theater I was watching it and seemed to be enjoying it a lot. So maybe it's just me. Homie for Life says about Hero, this film doesn't require it to convey the superhero angle. It can be done like the director's previous film, Irmitharai format. Yes, I agree with that. Mimicry Maran says, do you think Hero relatively serves a superhero film or just a vigilante movie with a superhero-like character? Now, superheroes are vigilantes. Now, Batman is a vigilante. He's a crime fighter. He's not doing it, yes, Commissioner Gordon is there and all that, so they're kind of legalizing it a little bit. But when he randomly bashes up a criminal, he is doing something that the law is supposed to do. So I think the vigilante universe is part of the superhero ethos. It's not something that heroes separate, superheroes separate, and vigilante is a separate thing. But here, I think, like I said earlier many times, because our regular heroes are themselves vigilante justice dispensers, I think, a superhero, you really need to have a proper reason to make them into a superhero. Guru Shankar Subramaniam says, I have only one question. What happened to the bike in Thambi? Jeethu Joseph's movies has a tight and gripping screenplay in which finding a logical loophole is almost difficult, but here I think it took cinematic liberties of thoughts. Yeah, it is too much of cinematic liberty. For instance, there's a spoiler here in case you haven't seen Thambi, but I didn't buy that whole killing of the cop angle. I mean, I did not think the character who kills the cop is capable of doing that, or he is capable of doing that if at the end you're following Karthi's version of events. But then they say that is not what really happened, and this killer is actually a very nice family guy. So I have a problem relating that guy with this guy. So I think they created moments that will make the audience go, "Oh wow, I didn't expect that to happen." But I don't think when you look at it, it progresses convincingly when you look at it carefully. Shiv is here says, how do you see the pattern of conveying a message in a movie? I personally felt preachy at parts and diluted the movie experience a bit. I could see a few people considering the movie, the message is a good movie. See, I don't think movie's job is to give a message at all. But here, the message is what is driving the movie. The fact that the education system is flawed is what this movie is driving at. So I think that is built into everything in the movie. So I think that is built into every aspect of the movie. For example, the hero Sivakarthikeyan's career as a forger goes back to his own education experience when his certificates were forged. So there's a lot of links here that make the messages a little more organic than your average message movie where somebody just stops and says, oh, I'm giving you this gyan randomly just like that. But here, it seemed a little more organic, but again, it was too talky for me in parts. Zangro says, why does SK have to wear the mask? And there's just too much talking, and why there has to be a heroine, and why commercial padam mokka padama eduthu vekranga. I don't think the heroine was badly used at all. We didn't have many duets and things like that. She really vanished for a long time. So she basically does the job of awakening Sivakarthikeyan and saying, if you think that's the reason for you to do this, then you're not doing a good job. And then she leaves the film. So I don't know if she's a conventional heroine as such. She's not. She kind of does a job and then leaves the film. And then she comes back only at the end only, and she's a useful presence. Because even from her point of view, it's not love. It's only from his point of view that it's love. So as about the mask, I really don't know. It's just like because superheroes have masks, I think. But I think what really bothered me was like the stubble under the mask, because I'm like, dude, get a shave. It's such a weird thing to see like this thing and like a stubble right there. I don't know. I had way too much time on my hands, I think, while I was watching the movie. So that's it for this episode of Ask VR. I'll see you in the next episode of Ask VR. Until then, have a Merry Christmas, a very, very happy 2020 from all of us at Film Companion South.